Good afternoon, members of the media. You're here in the PMR office today. We're having a press conference to talk about specifically the shootings that took place over the weekend. Without any further ado, I will introduce to you the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Paul Wright. It will be followed by the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Michael DeSilva.
Thank you for joining us here today. I'm going to talk today about 3 firearms incidents occurring in the space of 15 hours in North Hamilton. The first involved a reported gunshot occurring at about 10 on Friday night, the 25th of March. The scene was located at the junction of Lafan and Cedar Avenue, where a number of shell casings and a bullet head were recovered. There's no indication that any person was injured as a result. However, police would like to speak with 2 men who may have been the intended targets, who were seen leaving the area around that time on orange-coloured Yamaha motorcycles. The second incident is a confirmed shooting incident which occurred at about 10 to midnight that same evening, Friday the 25th of March. Police received several 911 calls concerning a male shot outside Rambling Lane, Pembroke. The victim was a 16-year-old male who lives in the area. He was standing with a group of other youths as he was shot by the gunman who approached on foot. The victim received multiple gunshots and is now in intensive care at the hospital, listed in stable condition. Full investigation by the Serious Crime Unit has been commenced, and the scene was preserved and held by police for further examination in daylight conditions. We do not yet have a named suspect, but eyewitness accounts indicate the gunman was dressed in dark clothing, perhaps wearing a white t-shirt with a dark-coloured hooded top, a woolen cap pulled over his face, and woolen gloves. He may have, and wearing gloves. He may have arrived at the scene as a pillion passenger on a motorcycle, driven by another male dressed all in black. During the morning of Saturday the 26th of March, officers completed their forensic examinations at Rambling Lane and released that crime scene. Several police officers dressed in plain clothes were still at that location, in company with other local residents, including some children, when they heard the sound of a gunshot. A single bullet head was recovered very close to where the group was standing, and it appears that this group was fired upon. The incident has left everybody shaken, as you can imagine, including the police officers. This was a callous and cowardly act that placed everybody there in mortal danger. Anyone with any information about these confirmed firearms incidents is encouraged, please, to contact Serious Crime Unit on 295-0011 or the Independent and Confidential Crime Stoppers Bermuda Hotline on 800-8477.
Now, the Commissioner of Police.
Thank you and good afternoon. In addition to the briefing that Mr. Wright has provided and the appeal for witnesses, I just really wanted to take a brief opportunity to send 3 messages to the community if I can. The first is really to say, in my opinion, the community should be outraged by all 3 incidents, but in particular the one on Saturday afternoon. And our telephones as a result, and those telephones at Crime Stoppers, should be ringing off the hook now as concerned citizens phone in any information, however small they may think it is, that might help the police to recover guns and take these reckless and dangerous gunmen off the streets for a long time. The second message, and it really shouldn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway, is that the police service will relentlessly pursue all serious crime investigations in an effort to identify and arrest those people responsible and prevent any escalation of gang violence or retaliation attacks. Even in these times of budget constraints, I can assure all of you that all possible police resources are sharply aimed at gun and gang crime. And the third message really is to my own staff, and that's to publicly commend the bravery of our police officers who are working so hard on a daily basis to help make Bermuda safer. But there's 2 sides to that coin, and the other side is actually public support that we rely on to achieve our mission. Our communities do not owe any refuge to any of these criminals that fire their guns at groups of innocent people in densely populated neighborhoods. They clearly have no regard for anyone that might be killed or injured. And I urge anyone with any information not to protect these criminals with your silence. Call the police so that we can immediately act on your information and bring these offenders to justice.
At this time, we'll open up the floor for questions from the media.
Commissioner DeSilva, hi, Cioma from ZBM. You said that the phones should be ringing off the hooks, are they?
They're not at this time.
Are you particularly concerned that an innocent, perhaps innocent bystander, teenager is now being randomly shot? And can you speak to parental concerns about your kids being outside their own homes at night?
Well, I think everyone should be concerned, and I think that's the message that we're communicating today. I mean, it would be wrong to say that the Bermuda community has got used to shooting incidents, but certainly in the last 2 days, these 3 incidents should, in my view, galvanize the community to say enough is enough.
And Mr. Wright, you stated the young man sustained several wounds. Can you expand and what's his condition, please?
Yeah, he did receive several gunshot wounds for which he's been detained in the intensive care unit. His last update on his condition was that he's stable, but he is still in the intensive care unit, which is an indication of the severity of the injuries. We just need some information. As the Commissioner said, the public is sick and tired of this. They're outraged and they should be calling us. We will act very swiftly on any information that we receive. We will go in and make sure that we make full use of the legal powers given to us to bring offenders to justice. Please, you need to call us. Don't sit by and protect these people with your silence.
Nadia, Royal Gazette.
My first question is, are any of these incidents believed to be linked?
That's something that we haven't ruled out. We have not formally linked the incidents, but we keep an open mind on that. Certainly there are some similarities, certainly in the last 2, very, very close to each other. Lone gunman perhaps brought to the scene as a passenger on a motorcycle, and again firing into a group of people in both incidents without any regard for where those bullets would fall and who would be killed.
Brian Darby.
In view of the incidents, will you increase the amount of gun clothing, protective clothing that you have?
Yeah, our officers are very well trained and they're very well equipped with modern police equipment, including anti-stab and anti-ballistic vests. That's part of their normal officer safety equipment, and we encourage all of our officers to make maximum use of that.
And they did on those 3 occasions they were wearing equipment?
No,
Bulletproof is what I'm looking for.
the equipment is available to the officers. It's the officer's choice on whether they actually use the equipment. But our advice to all of our staff in operational policing, where, as you know, most of our staff is to wear your protective vest at all times.
What I'm trying to get at is investigatory officers don't normally wear bulletproof equipment. They're not on duty as such, as you know, in a crisis. So would you now encourage your investigating staff to think more seriously about what they wear?
Well, that hasn't changed. The use of the equipment, the deployment of the equipment is all about the circumstances that you're going into. So that hasn't changed. We would expect that the officers that attended that incident, most of them would have had their equipment. Nothing's changed in that respect.
Arnold.
I'm transitioning from the BPSU situation onto the Fenton Drive situation, or the other situation. We noticed that the ambulance rated for police. Are we now to suggest that ambulance and first responders should be included in protective gear?
I don't know about protective gear. That would not be my place to comment. What we've had in place for a while with emergency service first responders is a protocol that we make sure that the scene is safe for them to attend. That's a pretty standard operating procedure. So the ambulance would not ordinarily roll straight into the scene until the police have said, okay, it's safe to do so.
Okay, now, with this shot Saturday afternoon, could it be ascertained or could it be surmised that these guys have gotten so bold that your presence doesn't matter?
We could probably surmise anything. I would caution against that. Let's talk about what we don't know. We don't know what was in the mind of the shooter, so there's little value for us to sit here and say he was shooting at the police, he was shooting at another victim. We don't know. That's the whole point. What we do know is that a person took it upon themselves to commit one of the most reckless acts we've seen, I think, in terms of firing indiscriminately into a crowd of people. Some of the people were neighborhood residents, some of the people were children, and some of the people were police officers. That's what we do know. What we don't know is who that person was. The people that live in that community, they know who he was, and they need to tell us.
Now, with so many officers in place on the scene and in the area questioning and canvassing, and the scene was pretty much locked down rather quickly, how do you get away?
Well, this was after the scene had been released, so we only had a handful of officers in the area. So most of the work had been done, and most people had already left.
Nadia?
Can you explain what the officers were doing at the time of the shooting on Saturday?
We had a couple of forensic officers just wrapping up their operations. We had a couple of detectives that were speaking to some people in the area.
From the previous days?
Yes, right, yes.
Anyone else?
Oh, one other question. We saw a very good relationship or rapport going between police officers and the general public on that particular crime scene. In the past, we've always seen an adversarial relationship. Has the relationship improved in that particular neighborhood between the police and the residents?
On the drive up here, I was just talking to Mr. Wright about how this potentially could set us back when you think that we've had foot patrols now in and around North Hamilton, every nook and cranny for the last 18 months. Police officers, unarmed, on foot, walking around, talking to all the residents in these places. We've come a long way. And this might be a setback, but I don't think it's a setback it's not a setback in the relationship between the police and the residents.
Are the residents still disgusted with the behavior?
I should think so.
Okay. Anyone else? Any more?
Just one quick question. How many officers were on the scene on Saturday before the shooting on Saturday?
Before the shooting happened?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact numbers, but it would have been a lot while the scene was still being processed. But as the Commissioner said, the scene was actually closed down and released about 30 minutes prior to that shooting occurring, and by that time it was just a handful of officers there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of the media.